one thing I think that's you mentioned that's extremely important. Like one of the things that people ask often is like, once I get a job, especially the new folks who get into tech, like what is it going to be like? Like they're very fearful of like, you
Mm,
know, there's this whole thing of like imposter syndrome or like looking dumb, whatever it is. Like,
absolutely.
you're new. It's expected that you're gonna like have to ramp up. That's
Mm,
whether you've been in the tech space for 10, 15 years or you've been in for like 2, 3 years, like, or you're brand new into it, like there's still ramp up time that every company gives you because they do
absolutely.
things differently,
Yeah, for sure.
So
Like that's just the expectation, especially if you're coming fresh from like boot camp
yeah,
or, graduation. Nobody actually expects you to know as much as you expect yourself to know.
exactly.
Like
Yeah,
you're
yeah,
just sitting
yeah.
there stressing yourself out
Right.
and you're like,
Yep.
"Oh my gosh, like
Right.
why haven't I figured this out? My story's going to spill over." Meanwhile, your whole team kind of already accounted that in the sprint planning because
Yeah.
they knew
Yep.
that would come with training a new hire
Right.
and training somebody who's literally new to the whole industry.
Right.
So you just have to be easy on yourself. You have to be gentle with yourself too, because it's really easy to get, psyched out,
Right.
especially when you're thinking like, oh man, it's like this is a big deal, my first job. Um, and of course, I know you touched on imposter syndrome, but there's also that external pressure of like, even though you're not supposed to be representing everybody that looks like you,
Yeah. Yeah.
you
Yeah.
kind of are a
Yeah. Yeah.
little
Yeah.
bit. It's
Yeah.
like
Yeah.
an
Yeah.
implicit
Yeah. Yeah.
burden.
Yeah.
So it's like you're thinking about that. You're thinking about all these things that most people, quite frankly, don't have to think about. But the thing is, you can't improve and you can't move further if you're just not gentle with yourself.
Hey, what's up, fam? This is Sar Levy, host of Africans in Tech, where we're building bridges and shaping futures in tech. On our episode today, we got Hawa Sila, right? Hope I got that
Yeah,
right.
you did. You did. You did.
I contacted Hawa on Instagram, just like I do all our guests, and she's here because she answered. So, Hawa, what we typically do is just ask people to, kind of do an introduction,
Mhm,
nothing technical. We'll just,
mhm.
ask you to talk about yourself, what you do, what you like, and where you're from, and whatnot. So, if you
Awesome.
don't mind, yeah.
All right. So thank you so much.
Uh-huh.
Like you said, my name is Hawa Sila. I am a full time software engineer,
Okay.
but while I do Java developing by day,
Hmm.
what I also do is podcasting as well and community building through my initiative, uh, Muslimas in Motion, right?
Okay.
So that is essentially a podcast and community dedicated to like building up and amplifying the voices of Muslim women in professional spaces.
Okay.
I chose to do this because I just noticed there was a severe lack of, media, especially when it comes to like the professional sense,
Okay.
when it came to, women, but namely Muslim women.
Okay.
Don't get me wrong, I love matcha and hijabs as much as the next girl.
Yeah.
But, I think it's really important to have that kind of representation when I see so many of the amazing, wonderful Muslim women around me
Yeah.
doing amazing things. I think it's important that we have that kind of visibility and do these kinds of things. Um, to kind of showcase like there's more to us, right? But then
Yeah.
also for ourselves as well. So we know that when it's our time to shine, we have someone to look to or people to look to or even a community to
Yeah.
go to and ask and things of that nature. So I figured, if nobody else was doing it, I will do it,
For
right?
sure. For
So
sure. Nice. Nice. Okay. And when did you we're gonna get into
Mhm.
your podcast. I'm just gonna find out a little bit more about yourself.
For sure, yeah.
So where are you from?
So I would say while I was born in Atlanta,
Okay.
I would say my heart well, I'm from Côte d'Ivoire, so
Okay.
me and my family are from Côte d'Ivoire.
Okay. Okay.
Yes.
And I think we were talking about it before you're a soccer fan.
Yes, I am an Arsenal fan,
Okay.
you know.
Why the face down?
I say this because I foresee, like it's a little I won't say it's controversial, I would
Mhm.
just say our club I would while we might not win every match, we're full of honor and spirit, and that's something that nobody could ever take away
Oh
from
my
me. Not a
God.
Tottenham fan, not a Chelsea fan, not a Man U fan, no nobody,
Yeah.
right? I
Uh,
love my club, so
I'm sorry. That sounds like a loser spirit right
listen,
there.
man, you can still be on top and also have that humility,
Winning
and
your heart.
that's why I love it so much,
Gotcha.
you
Gotcha.
know?
Okay. Okay. Cool. And how long you been in Atlanta?
Pretty much my whole life actually.
Okay.
I was born here, raised here. I would say that I'm a I'm a born Atlantean, which is
Okay.
funny because all the people I meet, nobody's ever from Atlanta. It's
Yeah.
like I remember somebody told me, you always meet people born from outside of Atlanta in Atlanta, but you never meet somebody from Atlanta in Atlanta. So I think it's kind of interesting.
Nice, nice.
Yeah.
And have you been to Cote d'Ivoire?
Yes,
Okay.
actually. I was actually just there a couple months ago to see my
Nice,
family and things like
nice.
that.
Yeah.
And I just love the country. I love the city, especially Abidjan.
Okay.
It's like my actually might be a hot topic, but I actually prefer Bouaké to Abidjan. Like Abidjan is nice because, you know, it's a
Yeah.
city, everybody knows it, but
Yep.
Bouaké to me is like more how do you describe it? It's like compare New York City to like
Okay.
Albany, right?
Okay.
It's like you still have a city of its own,
Okay.
but it's like there's something about it that's not all like hustle and
Yeah.
bustle. It's
Yeah.
like very to me it's more chill. You
Yeah.
got the trees, you
Yeah.
got, you know, people on their little motos. Like it's nice.
Yeah.
It's I
Yeah.
like the vibe a little
Yeah.
better.
I've been to Albany, so I definitely get the vibe there. So
Mhm.
yeah, dope, dope. And in terms of getting into tech a bit,
Mhm.
we talked about this. I think this is really dope. Your dad got you into tech, right?
Mhm.
Okay, can you talk a little bit about that?
For
And yeah,
sure. So growing up, I was always exposed to like, you know, so to start off, my dad, he is a software engineer as well.
okay,
And he really is a big inspiration to me. Growing up, I was always exposed to like his work, just seeing what he was doing. He was always open to talking about it, obviously.
yeah,
And I was also a little nerd growing up too. So it was
mhm,
very easy for me to ask him questions.
yeah,
And namely, I would say he was always the friend who would build computers, PCs for his friends. He would be like, you know, tell me the specs you want. In fact, don't even tell me the specs. Just tell me what you want in a computer. I'll find a bargain for you. I'll buy the parts. You just give me the money and then we'll take it over from there, right?
yep,
And so I'd always be his little assistant. So I'd always help him scout the parts in like Micro Center or Best Buy. I
nice,
don't know
nice.
if you know or remember Micro Center, but like that
Oh
was
yeah, yeah, yeah,
OG, you
yeah.
know, computer parts store.
It's right down the street.
Right. Like
Yeah,
it's
yeah, yeah,
fantastic and it was great. And I just the notion of looking for the things and then coming home and, you know, having a little lunch and then putting everything piece by piece
yeah,
and then installing the OS onto the actual machine
yeah.
itself, like every step from the beginning to the end
Nice,
was like
nice,
it
nice.
was so fun.
Yeah,
Sometimes I would even ask him like, when are we building the next computer? You know
yeah,
what I
yeah,
mean?
yeah,
I loved it so much. And I don't know. I for me, I always wanted to be a lot of things when I grew up, but at some point, I think I just decided inside, like, I don't know what I have to do, but I know whatever I want to do in this life, it has to do with technology. It has to do with something, right?
okay, okay.
Little did I know at the time, it could also make you a lot of money. So
Yeah,
that's just like a
yeah,
cool little bonus.
yeah.
But yeah, he's just always been I feel like my, like, biggest supporter
Nice,
actually, because
nice.
when I for even being interested in all these things to putting me on, giving me resources, you know, he was the one who sent me Codecademy at the time when it first popped
Yeah.
off, Scratch, I don't know if you, like, know the
No, I
Scratch
definitely know Scratch.
visual, yeah.
Yeah, definitely know Scratch. Yeah,
Like, when I was a
yeah,
kid, he was like, "You need to check this website out," and I fell in love with that website too, like, seriously,
yeah,
like the definition of like fostering your child's interest was, you know, my father, right? And I'm very grateful for that, truly. And yeah, I mean, he's really just seeing him as an engineer and honestly being an amazing engineer as well.
yeah,
Like learning from him being able to even help me out with my programming assignments,
yeah, yeah.
like truly been a big influence in my life. So
That's awesome.
yeah.
Yeah. You brought up Scratch, so um, I think I started probably my second stint of like doing. I'm not a programmer, but doing
Mm,
like programming, like
mhm.
basics and things like that, with Harvard CS50.
Yes, yes, yes.
Yeah, so I did that, and Scratch was like one of the first things they teach through that. So yeah, it's really dope. I think it's a great program for anybody that's or application for anyone that's looking to get their kids into coding a bit.
For sure,
Um,
yeah,
yeah.
absolutely. It's a visual it's like Visual Basic, right? It's like
Yep.
visual based programming,
Yeah.
but I still feel like there's so many people who have built amazing things
Yeah.
from just such a limited
Yeah.
thing, which actually I feel like the more limitations you have, the more creative you can be anyways, right?
Yeah.
So I really enjoy that platform even now. Like sometimes I go back and look at my old projects and then look at other people's projects because
Mm.
it's really cool.
Yeah. Um, I know we talked about this also, but one of the things that I I'm not necessarily fear, but one of the things that I was worried about was living vicariously through my kids
Yeah.
because yes, I'm in tech. Yes, I've been in tech for a minute, but it's like I want them to kind of find their own way. So
Mhm.
the fact that your dad was just doing hobbies with you and then you naturally transition to it, I think that's really dope because not
Yeah.
a lot of people, you know, they don't know how to transition into that. I think a
Mhm.
lot of times it's like you you tend to do that subconsciously, like living vicariously through your kid, where
Mhm.
you're like, oh yeah, do this, do that, but then like I really don't want to do this. But it's just natural hobbies of your dad kind of building stuff with you, and then you actually
Yeah.
end up transitioning to it. So that's dope.
For sure,
Yeah.
yeah.
Um. Okay, so you started, I guess, building stuff with them, and then I guess, and at what age did you actually like take it seriously to be like, hey, I'm gonna actually, look at this as a career?
So, like I mentioned earlier, I was always kind of like a nerd. So, I think I always tinkered around with
Mm.
stuff just technically.
Yeah.
But I would say maybe like middle school,
Oh
I
wow.
was like, you know what, I'm gonna go to school for like programming
Yeah.
or software engineering, whatever. This is like who I am. Because for a long time I actually wanted to be in game development. I loved video games.
Nice. Nice.
So I told myself, okay, like what is the path to that, right?
Yeah.
Naturally is getting a computer programming, some kind of
Yeah.
programming degree or something, and
Yeah.
then working my way from there, right? So
Mhm.
I would always choose activities that were kinda related to engineering slash
Gotcha.
programming. Um,
That's nice. Yeah.
yeah, and then I think in high school, I was taking, like, classes and things like that that were just, like, programming classes,
Okay.
um, like AP programming, all these things, and
Okay.
just taking, like, web dev classes and all these things, and then also, in addition to that, my dad also introduced me to Udemy, which
Okay.
is that whole, like,
Yeah. Yeah.
course
Yeah. Yeah. Yep.
platform,
Yep.
so now I was also doing things with that as well, so
That's
I think
awesome.
that was
Yeah.
at the time where I was like, "You know what? I wanna lock in. I wanna do this for,
Yeah.
a living, so let's do it," you know?
Nice. Nice. Okay. No, that's really dope. I mean, the fact that you were thinking about this in middle school,
Mhm.
there's not a lot of middle
Yeah.
school kids that think about that. So that's
Listen, at the
yeah.
time, was I the coolest for that? Probably not,
Yeah.
but I guess it paid off,
It pays
so
off. No, it
it's
definitely
fine.
pays off. Yeah. Okay. All right. So middle school, like you're geeking it out, you're rocking it out a bit,
Mhm.
and then high school, you decide, all right, this is it. Okay. Web programming and I guess computer programming in general. When I was in, in high school, that was not a thing. Dating myself a little bit, but the fact that they offer those classes now, it's amazing. And
For
you you know
sure.
you you decided to take it and then you supplemented that with stuff like Udemy and maybe
Mhm.
YouTube videos or whatnot. So
Mhm.
that's really cool. And the fact that you also have like your dad kind of mentoring you in those ways, that's really dope.
For sure, yeah.
Okay, so going post high school, were you working or were you just kind of like still learning?
So post high school, I kinda shifted, so I got accepted into college,
Okay.
things were cool.
Where'd you go to school?
Georgia State.
Okay, dope.
Yep.
Okay.
Go Panthers. But yeah,
Yeah.
so I went to school, in typical, African father fashion
Mhm.
or parents fashion. My
Yeah.
parents were like, "You know what? We really want you to focus on your studies. Like,
Yeah.
don't try to balance too many things at once.
Yeah.
Go ahead and just do study." I worked in the summer to like save up. It was like a retail job,
Gotcha.
kind of did my thing,
Yeah.
saved up money, and also, thankfully my parents were there to help me as well. And I just kind of focused on school.
Okay.
And I'm not gonna lie. So I grew up in going to like all these advanced classes,
Okay.
all these advanced programs or elevated learning programs.
Yeah.
And, you know, the gag is they don't really teach you proper studying
Okay.
skills, right? You just kind of go through school. People are telling you, "Oh, you're intelligent. Oh, you're in this special class." And you're just kind of learning things. You're just like, "Wow, cool." You're blasting through whatever. And so it's funny. The beginning of undergrad was a little bit of an adjustment period for me because that was actually the first time I really had to sit and lock in and be like, "Oh, this is not gonna work. Like
Yeah.
showing up to class doesn't work
Yeah. Yeah.
anymore.
Yeah.
You gotta actually study. You
Yeah.
actually gotta know what you're doing. You got to, you know, go to class, do the homework,
Yeah. Yeah.
right? Because everybody thinks, oh, I can skip one class, but really, I mean, you're paying thousands of dollars to go somewhere. I
Yeah.
suggest you go to every class, right?
Yeah.
And I
Yeah.
had to learn that the hard way, right?
Yep.
So I think it was a necessary lesson though. I think you know, I'm not afraid to say it like, I'm not a perfect person, right? And I think it's important for people to know that it's first of all, it's okay that you do go through that adjustment period,
Yeah.
especially when maybe you were in a system where maybe you didn't get to learn these things because let's
Right.
be honest, like it's all about like get the best grade you can, but what are you actually retaining? What are you
Right.
actually doing?
Yep. Yep.
That's why for me, I think I found so much fulfillment in like programming and doing these things outside of my
Definitely.
school day to
Definitely.
day.
Definitely.
Um, because or even like doing programming club like engineering club because for
Yeah.
me it's like okay I'm working towards something and here's the result, right?
Yeah.
Like I'm actually learning through doing,
Right.
but these other things you just have to get the grade and it doesn't matter if you're interested, it doesn't
Right.
matter if like you actually even remember this thing tomorrow,
Yeah.
as long as you just get the correct grade in this class or this exam.
Yeah.
I mean that's all there is. And I think but it's again like I said, not life cannot always be about the thing you enjoy the most. Sometimes you have to put in the work, and
Yeah.
that's something I did learn. It wasn't until I think junior year, no, oh, excuse me, actually sophomore year, I need more money,
Yeah.
so
Yeah.
I started working.
Okay.
Again, I think
Now, is
that
this retail or is this like
now this was with the university, so actually started working with the university career services,
okay?
which at first glance might be like, okay, whatever. But I feel like I learned so much
Okay.
because while there's so many intelligent, engineers, computer scientists, etc., especially as students,
Right.
again, you have to put in the work and have the foresight to kind of develop yourself
Right.
career-wise and
Yep.
professionally, right?
Yep.
And I'm actually quite grateful for that experience because that experience kind of taught me the value of personal branding, having a proper LinkedIn, having a proper presence online,
Yep.
having a proper, just developing yourself in these ways, like whether it's through soft skills. I'm gonna be honest, a lot of a lot of us engineering folks, we're not known for having good soft
Yeah.
skills.
Yep.
So
Yep.
I think it's really good to have that
Yeah.
balance. Shout out to Georgia State Career Services because I had worked there for the rest of my college experience, but I learned so much even from we had partnered with like companies who come in, whether that be like, well, I won't say, but like local computer like engineering companies or even companies who are based on San Fran, all these places.
Nice. Nice.
And you get to, even as somebody who works at career services, you get to talk to these people, kind of get insights into what they're looking for. But not just that, I mean, before you can even show people what you're doing, technically, you have to put on a good face on professionally, right?
Mhm.
So like being able to not only see what people are looking for, but then also part of our job was to even train people as well.
Yep.
Like that experience in itself just kind of like helped me build those skills that I needed when it was time for me to look for internships, look for jobs, etc., etc.
Yeah.
And I enjoyed that.
Yeah. I mean, you said a lot there, like a lot of good stuff, like
Hmm.
nuggets wise. The fact that you're in school, you're not just doing the theoretical, which
Hmm.
we've talked about in this podcast. Like you're doing the practical, like you literally building stuff. Like you
Hmm.
have something you can put on your resume that states, "Hey, I built X, Y, and Z applications."
Hmm.
You know how the connections work. You ran into errors, and you
Hmm.
actually are able to fix some of those errors. Because as you build stuff, you're gonna run into,
Oh yeah, it's
you know,
inevitable,
your
right?
function is is failing for whatever reason, right? So,
Exactly.
um, like I think it's really cool that um you're doing the practical and even though you have your dad there but you're actually taking it upon yourself to be part of these clubs
Hmm.
and you're learning not just from I think your dad as well but peers and you're
Hmm.
forming those relationships
For
which I
sure.
think boot camp and also 4 years I think kind of mesh in this realm where from a 4 year standpoint um the interactions that you get with working with people outside of like your small
Absolutely.
Community is amazing,
Yeah.
and those social cues that you learn as well, it's amazing. And
Yeah, people really underestimate that stuff,
yeah,
especially like the more you work professionally, right?
hmm
The more you realize like that trumps, how should I say this? I won't say it always trumps experience or knowledge, right?
yeah,
But you have to have that. You
yeah,
can't be severely lacking in
right,
these parts, and you can't be severely lacking in the technical aspect either.
right.
Because at the end of the day, whether you like it or not, you're gonna be working with people,
You
right?
need both.
Yeah. If you're gonna be
Yeah,
a good team player, and the truth is also like for those who are interested in, visibility and
yep,
career
yep,
progression,
yep,
the truth of the matter is like you kind of need that
yep,
visibility. You need to know how people operate,
right,
so then that way you could be doing amazing. You could have the most pull requests out of everybody in your
right,
team. You can have the most efficient code, whatever.
right.
But if nobody, it's like if the tree falls down in the forest and nobody there to hear it, doesn't
Yeah,
make a
what's the point?
sound.
Yeah,
What's the point?
yeah, yep,
You could be doing so many amazing things, but if you don't know how to market yourself, you
right,
don't know how to, sell yourself when it's time for promo
yeah,
period or it's time for, raise time.
right.
I mean,
Doesn't matter. Yeah,
exactly.
yeah. No, you're completely right. I mean, they have different um jobs, they call different things, but basically like employee reviews, your performance reviews. So,
Mm-hmm.
and a lot of that is not just based on your technicals. There's also like, how do you help the team as a whole?
Exactly.
Like,
Like how are you progressing, but also how are you helping the company
right.
achieve their goals?
Yeah,
Ultimately, that's what every company wants. They want somebody who helps them get closer to what they're trying to do,
exactly.
you know?
Yeah, yeah. I think a lot of times when we think engineering, we think silos. Like, oh yeah, I'm just gonna be in the basement just coding, doing whatever.
Exactly.
No, that's not real life, bro.
No, it's
Like,
not.
yeah, like, even like you talk about your pull request, like somebody has to review that, and
Uh-huh,
then
right.
yeah, somebody has to talk
You gotta
about
have the code
what the
review.
PR say. Yeah, yeah.
Exactly. You gotta
So
explain what you're doing. You gotta
exactly,
explain why
yeah,
you put this comment here, this line here.
right,
All of these things are key, right?
right, yeah,
You know?
yeah. Dope, dope. Okay, cool. So let's jump forward a little bit.
Mhm.
When did you get your first like gig?
That was in 2022.
Okay,
Fall 2022,
and
yeah,
you
it
started
was.
school when?
2018.
Jesus Christ, I'm old. Hey, God. God, I'm old. What the?
Yeah.
Okay. Sorry, continue.
Yeah, so
Okay.
yeah, I'm still fresh on the block,
Yeah,
yeah.
yeah.
So I yeah, it was 2022 and I remember I was really excited cuz rewind back to like so COVID time was my sophomore year, like the
Okay.
second half of my sophomore year. And I was so stressed because I was, minding my business, doing my assignments.
Mhm.
And, like most CS majors, we go on Reddit, right? And so I was going on Reddit and people are talking about, oh, I got this internship, I got this job, I got this final offer. And I was sitting there, I was like, what am I doing? Like, what's going on? Right.
Yeah,
And
yeah,
I remember being at my desk in my room and having a little meltdown because I was like, what are you gonna do? How will like you're not gonna have nothing by the time you're gonna graduate? Like,
yeah,
obviously catastrophizing a little bit, but
yeah.
in my head I was like, oh, I gotta fix this, right? Um, Long story short, I didn't end up getting internship. It was like a solutions architecture internship, which I
Okay.
learned a lot. It was really interesting.
Are you allowed to say which company or?
Oh, yeah, it was Cox Enterprises.
Nice, nice.
Yeah,
Okay,
it was
okay,
great.
okay.
I enjoyed it. I also, my mentor slash manager, Dame Bambury, awesome. Like it was
Nice.
taught me so much again about like personal branding, like all these things, like presence. Like
Yeah,
it was amazing.
nice.
And I remember too because he was like, at the end of the day, the your programming skills, these are not the issue. These are things that you can always develop.
Right,
But
right,
one thing that people severely underestimate that you really need in this industry, if you want to progress, is these soft skills, is the self branding,
yep,
personal branding, motivation.
yep,
Excuse me. What's the word? Yeah, personal branding, marketing, these things.
yep.
Because it's like, even if you're not trying to be like a viral
Right,
person or anything like on the outside, you
right,
still need to build a professional brand within
right,
yourself. So whether that's within your company or people that you network and they know you has this person
Right.
who's good at this thing, and they know that you can come to you for this thing no matter what, right?
Right.
So you really taught me the value of that as well. So I learned a lot from that internship.
Nice. Nice.
And then, yeah, so I work full time now as a
Okay.
software engineer. Fast forward to 2025 now. Sheesh,
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
time
Nice.
flies, but
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah, I think one key component, at least I got out of that, is that for networking. Like that,
Hmm.
that to me is like, um, we talk about it a lot, but I think it's undersold or undervalued in terms of
Absolutely.
like how important it is to network, not only through school, but also whether you're doing boot camp, even on the job, like networking with other individuals, like, trying to move up that corporate ladder. I mean, I've seen it like where people have gotten jobs. I'm like, bro, you have no business getting that job, but they know somebody that knows
You
somebody,
see?
and they're good at talking. Because, like you said, the technicals you can always learn.
Hmm.
That's something that you can grow, even if somebody's better than you technically. Like those are
Hmm.
things over the years you can develop and you can grow. And
Absolutely. Especially if
yeah,
you just work hard.
exactly. Yeah. So if you have that work ethic and you combine that with networking skills, like to me, like you can go really, really
Oh, yeah.
far. Yeah. So
Absolutely.
that's dope.
I think somebody that I really respect and really value told me that, like, there are people who are half as smart as you in the rooms that you should be in,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah. Yeah.
So, like, the only thing your only limit is yourself.
Yeah.
Like, you're not putting yourself out there, so
Right.
you need to put yourself out there. Quite frankly, I know it is scary
Hmm.
because you think you reach out to people and it's like they might leave you on red. They
Yep.
might say
Yep.
no, whatever. But I think seeing the value in, like, that's something I kind of learned recently too, is just not being afraid to reach out,
Yeah.
not
Yep.
being afraid to have the asks because you just never know
Right.
who would say yes, right?
Yep.
I think it's really important.
Yeah. And then internships. I mean, we for the repeated guests and the followers and whatnot. You guys know we talk about the value of internships. Like
Hmm.
whether you're working for Facebook or some small startup, it doesn't matter. You get the practical experience.
Hmm.
A lot of people are forgetting that, from the practicality of it, it's also the fact that you have now real world experience in doing whatever it is, whatever field that you're in. And I think that to me is something that we don't push hard enough. Especially like a lot of podcasters talk about, getting in tech. Like we talk about, oh yeah, making 100,000, 200, whatever it is. Like that's great, but it's like,
Yeah.
okay, how do you get to that? And it's not always just applied to 10,000 jobs. It's like, okay, what if there's a internship that's been vacant for a year? Why don't you fill that? And then, yes, you got to grind. Yes, it may be unpaid, but now you're one step closer to getting that dream job, whatever it is, and breaking into the field. So,
Yeah, I think, and you bring up a really valuable point. A lot of people, especially the way these things are marketed, like on TikTok
yeah,
and
yeah,
social media, like being an engineer and doing all these things. You see the people get the free lunch, the free dinner,
yeah,
the
yeah.
company parties, the nap pods. You see all this stuff, and you're like, wow, this is so great. They get caught up in like the prestige
Yep,
and the
yep,
hoopla, but everybody forgets like the work that it takes to get there.
yep,
And then also there are going to be days and even some jobs where you feel like, why am I here? What is this all for? Like,
yep,
this isn't great. I remember actually I was talking to somebody, um, and she was basically talking about her experience getting an unpaid internship.
yeah,
And, you know, she was still kind of like, okay, like, why? In her head, she was like, oh, it was unpaid. But the truth is, she was looking for internships. She never had an internship.
yeah,
She didn't even know she was needed to look for internships.
right,
Um, but you know what? She took it and she gained the experience from it. And she was grateful nonetheless.
nice,
Then, next cycle, she applies to another internship. It's a smaller company. She's super grateful. But then this Amazon recruiter actually like reaches out to her, asks, "Hey, we want you to apply for X, Y, and Z."
yeah,
Long story short, she applies. She gets that internship. Now she has that internship on her resume.
yeah,
But it's like you gotta, a lot of people are just looking at the journey and being like, "Oh, she's here,"
yeah,
like, but you're forgetting the steps that it took to even get there, right? And the truth is, um, a lot of these CS jobs, engineering jobs, you can have just as fulfilling a career without all these like big tech fang things.
Right.
But it's easy to like shoot for that, obviously, because it's there, it's sparkly, it's
Yeah.
nice, it's cool, but not everybody has that, and it's okay. I
Yeah.
think people just need to like also be okay with that notion as well. I don't know how to say it. It's obviously don't work hard, don't not shoot for that if
Right.
that's what you want. But I think a lot of us, myself included, at some point get twisted up in the optics, get twisted up in the, you know, I want this because it looks nice.
Right.
Um, but that's not what it's all about. Obviously, if that's what you're about, then
Right.
that's fine.
Yeah.
I'm not
Yeah.
judging you.
Right.
But I think if I'm gonna work somewhere, I wanna work somewhere that means something
Right.
towards what I'm doing. If I'm working towards something for 8 hours a day, I want it to,
Yeah. Has some value. Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah.
like I need it
Intrinsically. Yeah.
to feel like, you know, fulfilling.
Right.
I need to feel like I'm working towards something that
Yeah.
is, even if it's not benefiting, it's not saving the world, obviously,
Right.
but even if it's to the scale of benefiting my family or benefiting or helping me get to the goals that I need to do so I can work on the things that do benefit my community, like,
Yeah.
there has to be like a purpose behind it to
Yeah.
me, right?
Yeah. No, really, really good point. Because I was talking to this with a friend. I think it was like 2 days ago. We're talking about RSUs, right?
Mm-hmm.
So RSUs, restricted stock units, where basically company gives you, a certain amount of their stock and say, hey, um, over 3, 4 years, whatever it is,
Mm-hmm.
you can sell these stocks and that's cash. So it could be 100,000, could be 300,000, depends on whatever company you're with. Um, but the value of that stock depends on the value of the company.
Mm-hmm.
So when you're working at a company that you value and you're actually putting your effort in, it's going to show because what you're going to build and what you're going to produce, people tend to value those things because they see the hard work and the sweat and tears that you put into whatever said product is. So it's not always the case, but um, it's very important that you're working for a company that you really care about or that you want to see grow, because
Mm-hmm.
that often leads to literally like financial benefit, because
Absolutely,
what you're
yeah.
building
You're
is
in,
literally
yeah, you're
yeah,
incentivized by
right,
that, you
exactly,
know?
yeah. So I think a lot of times people look at these companies, it's just another paycheck, which it can be for some people. Not hating on it. If that's what
Right,
it is, that's what
exactly.
it is. But
Right.
for those who actually are looking to build with the company that they care about, they like their purpose, vision, and all that other jazz. Like it, there is a reward for that. It's
Mm-hmm.
not just, oh yeah, you're getting your base pay, but
You know,
yeah,
and I think as, just as human beings in general, I think there just personally, I think there needs to be a shift towards just doing things that serve us rather than just doing things for the sake of like, oh, it looks nice
yeah,
or whatever. 'Cause at the end of the day, how sustainable is that?
exactly, yeah,
Like if it's not burnout that gets you bad health because you're just working or
yeah,
doing something that just, you can feel when you're doing something and it just don't sit with you. You
right,
feel like this is not for me
yeah,
versus like when you're doing stuff and you just feel your whole body like you can work till 2 a.m.
yeah,
on something.
yeah,
Like for example, what you're doing here, this
yeah.
podcast, right? I know you feel like, okay, this is, you know,
I love it.
yeah, let
Yeah,
me not,
yeah. No, I love
read
it.
your
Yeah, no,
mind, but
I
it's
love
like
it.
you
Yeah,
probably
yeah,
feel like this is what I was put here to do.
yeah.
This
I
is
love that stuff.
why I do this because I want to put people on the map. I do this because
Mm,
our, African engineers or people in tech, whether
yeah,
that's engineers, product managers,
yeah,
sales, anything,
right.
we need representation, right?
Yep, yep,
Yeah, there has to be something in your life that just brings you that kind of fulfillment, right?
yeah,
And it doesn't hurt if it's the thing that you're doing 8 hours a day,
yeah, yeah.
right?
Exactly. Yeah. Um, cool. So you are a Java developer.
Hmm.
What is that? For anyone that has no clue what Java is, what a Java developer does, what is that?
Well, I guess so. As a Java developer, so Java, for those who don't know, is like a object-oriented programming language. It's let's see. I would say, man, that's such a weird question
Yeah,
because it's like even
yeah,
though I use it all the time, it's like weird. I use it, but like how do I define it?
yeah,
I usually typically Java developers, like I'm a backend developer, which means I work on like a lot of system level software.
yep,
I work on things that for my company that basically not the shiny cute stuff on the front,
yeah.
but all the functionality and
It
the
supports
business
it. Yeah.
logic goes
Mhm.
on in the back. Not to say it's not cool to work on the shiny cute stuff. I like that stuff
Yeah.
too, but that's what I do from day to day.
Yeah.
And so I guess my technical stack would be like, the language I work in Java, the framework I use is like Spring Boot.
Okay.
Um,
What's Spring Boot?
so Spring Boot is a framework in Java that kind of allows you to bootstrap your project.
Okay.
So then that way you don't have to rewrite a bunch of boilerplate code. Um, so for example, right, think about it like if you're just writing the whole Java application from scratch,
Hmm.
not using any frameworks or anything,
Yep.
it's like you're trying to cook a meal in a kitchen,
Yep.
but there's no oven, there's no stove, there's no dishwasher, sink, etc.
Yep.
Having a Spring Boot application is like having the sink, having the stove, having the, you know, the little kettle.
Yep.
So all you have to do is actually like write the code, which is in this case cooking the meal, right?
Nice.
So yeah,
Nice.
makes my life a whole lot easier.
Nice.
And
Nice.
most developers' lives a whole lot easier because the truth is, right, when you're writing enterprise applications, um, you can't write everything from scratch all the time.
Right.
There's too much room for error, especially when you're onboarding new people, you get new developers, you're working with cross functional teams.
Yep.
I mean, realistically, that's just not feasible.
Yeah.
So, when you're writing for these larger companies, or even for yourself, if you choose to make your own application, using frameworks like these make your life a whole lot easier.
Nice. Nice. Cool. Um, I think we talked about this in the past with
Hmm.
another it's the cloud guy talking about like, sort of like the Docker concept where
Hmm.
carry and go and you can do everything you need and then you just build whatever you need to build on top of it.
Yeah.
So that's like it's dope that you have that framework when it comes to like building. Like, do you choose as a Java developer which framework you want to use, or is it like your job?
Yeah,
Yeah.
so essentially, when you go into a job, they pretty much have, unless you're, starting from scratch at a startup or something,
Yeah.
they likely already have an existing code base full of, legacy code or whatever.
Hmm.
So your job is to come in and kind of catch yourself up
Yep.
and just start working. Obviously, when I first started, I was like new grad, right?
Yeah.
So there's some ramp up time that comes with that. Not like an somebody who's been doing this for 10 years, right? So
Yeah.
there are things that I would have to learn about Spring, Java, etc., that were new to me, right? Because let's be honest, things you learn in school is not the things that you're going to be applying day to
Day to
day
day. Yep.
in a professional environment, right? But that's why you have these opportunities, so you can just contribute as effectively as possible to wherever you're working.
Nice. Nice. Okay. Um. So, you get into your first job. You're a Java developer.
Hmm.
What other like tools or skills you felt like you had to learn like early on, whether technical or soft skills, like in
Hmm.
your first year? What are some things that you learned?
So another thing I'm very grateful for my father is one thing he told me is like learn Git,
Okay.
learn what a pull request is, learn how to push code,
Yeah. Yeah.
learn how to merge, rebase, all these things.
Yeah.
And that came with a little bit of learning curve, but I did that in like undergrad, so I
Okay.
was pretty comfortable with these things.
Okay.
Um, but I did notice when I first started working, so you know, I did my best to help others as well at the, because, you're meeting people and stuff and you're talking with other new hires.
Hmm.
And, some people didn't know Git.
Yep.
And that's really not their fault because depending on whatever program or whatever school you went to, maybe
Yeah.
that's just not something you came across as often, right? It's
Hmm.
not something that was emphasized very greatly. They're just like,
Yeah.
program in this language, turn in the assignment.
Yeah.
So that's one thing I noticed that I think is really important to learn. It's like learn Git, learn what all these things mean.
Yeah.
It's very important for the developer workflow. It's, I mean, not very important. It's like your first.
It's a must. Yeah.
Yeah, it's like the
Yeah.
it's
It's the
like
baseline,
you
right?
gotta open the door before you get in the store,
Right.
right?
Right.
Like Git is the door.
Right.
You
Yeah.
gotta know how to actually contribute to your team.
Right.
You can't really write anything and contribute if you can't learn these commands or know these commands, right?
Right.
Um, I would say too. You mentioned Docker. I think most enterprise applications are containerized.
Yep.
So familiarizing yourself with these kinds of tools and technologies is very important.
Yeah.
And then overall, just makes you a better developer too. Because when you do work on your own things, you can just take from these. It makes you a more efficient developer as well.
Yeah.
Cloud technologies, a lot of companies, if they're not already on the cloud, they're migrating to the cloud. So GCP, AWS, Azure.
Yeah.
I think, that's a given. Most people are trying, if not already have their certifications in them.
Yeah.
So that's definitely something, even if you're not a cloud specialist, it still helps to kind of know what these technologies are so you can contribute in meetings and, maybe even to documentation.
Yeah.
So even if you're early in your career, the more like we discussed your impact, how you can help others, things like that,
Yeah.
the better it looks for you. So if you already know all these things, your ramp up time is going to be a lot quicker
Yep.
because you're not having to start at the starting line. You're already a little bit ahead.
Yeah.
What else?
I mean, while you're thinking about that,
Hmm.
one thing I think that's you mentioned that's extremely important. Like one of the things that people ask often is like, once I get a job, especially the new folks who get into tech, like what is it going to be like? Like they're very fearful of like, you
Hmm.
know, there's this whole thing of like imposter syndrome or like looking dumb, whatever it is. Like,
Absolutely.
you're new. It's expected that you're gonna like have to ramp up. As
Mhm.
whether you've been in the tech space for 10, 15 years or you've been in for like 2, 3 years, like, or you're brand new into it, like there's still ramp up time that every company gives you because they do
Absolutely.
things differently,
Yeah, for sure.
So
Like that's just the expectation, especially if you're coming fresh from like boot camp
yeah,
or, graduation. Nobody actually expects you to know as much as you expect yourself to know.
exactly.
Like
Yeah,
you're
yeah,
just sitting
yeah.
there stressing yourself out
Right.
and you're like,
Yeah.
"Oh my gosh, like
Right.
why haven't I figured this out? My story's going to spill over." Meanwhile, your whole team kind of already accounted that in the sprint planning because
Yeah.
they knew
Yeah.
that would come with training a new hire
Right.
and training somebody who's literally new to the whole industry.
Right.
So you just have to be easy on yourself. You have to be gentle with yourself too, because it's really easy to get, psyched out,
Right.
especially when you're thinking like, oh man, it's like this is a big deal, my first job. Um, and of course, I know you touched on imposter syndrome, but there's also that external pressure of like, even though you're not supposed to be representing everybody that looks like
Yeah. Yeah.
you
Yeah.
kind of are a
Yeah. Yeah.
little
Yeah.
bit. It's
Yeah.
like
Yeah.
an implicit
Yeah. Yeah.
burden.
Yeah.
So it's like you're thinking about that. You're thinking about all these things that most people, quite frankly, don't have to think about. But the thing is, you can't improve and you can't move further if you're just not gentle with yourself.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, I've had that several times.
Yeah.
For all the Syrians in the
Right.
world, I must get this code right.
Seriously, like it's like, cause I don't know about you,
Yeah.
but you always have that like little irrational fear, like,
Yeah. Yeah.
dang, what if the next person that looks like me comes up in here? You're like, oh,
Yeah.
bro,
Yeah.
the last one couldn't
Man,
do
this
it,
dude right here.
right? Exactly. So it's like, it's like,
Yeah.
it's
Yeah.
and it sounds funny when you say it out loud, but these are
Yeah.
the things that go
Yep.
through your head,
Yeah. Yeah.
But it's really
Yeah.
important to know that, like, it's okay. You're still a human too,
Right.
right? Mistakes are inevitable, and maybe people do perceive you a
Right.
certain way
Yeah.
or as incompetent or whatever. But I think the thing that I learned is not to avoid that feeling, but actually, like, not to prevent it from happening,
Yeah.
but just to accept that it's gonna happen at some
Right.
point. Because let's be
Lean
honest,
into it. Yeah. Yeah.
it's
Yeah.
it is what it is.
Yeah.
Like, this is the world we live in.
Right.
Not everybody's gonna like you. Not everyone is gonna see you and
Yeah.
see an engineer. Not
Yeah.
everyone's gonna see you and see a professional. Not everybody's.
Yeah.
But at the end of the day, if it's not impacting your paycheck,
Right.
if it's not
Yeah.
impacting, I mean, if they're not standing outside your door,
Right.
like,
Banging. Yeah. Yeah. Yep. Yep. Yep.
I think we can't let, and this is kind of hard for me to say. I don't think I would have said this a little bit ago, but that's something I'm really learning is like I can't let these things impact me because at the end of the day, who's losing, right?
Right.
Is it the person who's looking at me, giving me a side eye, giving a little attitude, or having all these little micro, aggressions or whatever?
Right.
If anything, even if they didn't mean to or meant to, like this is working, right?
Yeah.
And if I just allow that to get to me, which let me just take a moment to say it is okay to let it get to you. Like it's okay to have some days where you're just tired, you're burnt out, you just can't do it. You go out, you go treat yourself to whatever fast food or junk food of choice. You treat yourself to whatever your vice of choice or whatever, you know what I mean? A little ice cream treat that you told yourself you wasn't gonna eat, but you let yourself feel it fully and then you gotta
Go
shift. You
back.
gotta
Yeah.
shift.
Yeah.
Because at the end of the day, right? If you really want to make like do progress, you really want to make an impact, you can't let these things stop you. It's the people who I saw this thing that it said, what did it say? It said it's not that a lot of people couldn't succeed. It's just that they stopped too early.
Right.
Like best example I can think of right now is content creation. A lot of people have really good content. A lot of people have really good things they're putting out. A lot of valuable information,
Yep.
but they see 300 followers and they're just like, man, nobody's following me.
Right.
This isn't working. I'm gonna just stop.
Right.
And it's crazy, right? Because it's a lot of times people say it's like when you decide to stop is when things start popping off, you
Right.
know? So it's important to like not let that stop you.
Yeah.
Because, I experienced it for myself. Like it just stunts you,
Yeah.
really.
Yeah.
It just stunts you. And at the end of the day, you can't let that happen. That's not
Yeah.
you didn't come all this way to let
Right.
that happen, you know?
Yeah. And we're going to segue into
Hmm.
kind of the next topic here, but just to add to that, like I listened to, I don't know if it was top 10, but it's advices from Mr. Beast,
Hmm.
who's one of like the most popular YouTubers, if not the most popular out there. He said one of the key things for him was like just keep creating.
Hmm.
People will find you eventually.
Yep.
Keep creating. Somebody will find you, and then your audience, you'll then find your audience even in that. You start catering and you start modifying, your content and videos around that. So,
Absolutely.
for those of you who are in that,
Hmm.
content creation space now, just a word of encouragement, like just keep pushing. Yeah,
Absolutely.
your time will
And
come. So, yeah,
exactly. And it's like, don't worry about, you know, is this going to fit the trend? This is going to fit
yep,
the thing that's out
yep,
right now.
yep,
I think I saw, man, I can't remember who this was from, but it's a pretty common theme. Long story short, they always say that, like, whatever your audience is, like you said, they'll find you.
yep,
Instead of trying to become the most popular or the most centrist, this,
yeah,
because you want to appeal to everybody. That's actually not what you want because at
right,
the end of the day, you're not really going to have many followers or anything because you're not really standing out enough. And then also, it's like people are trying to figure out what are you truly about. It
yeah,
doesn't feel genuine, right?
right,
And this is just from a consuming perspective. Like, at the end of the day, you want to, the people who appeal to others are the ones who feel genuine, who feel like their mission, what they stand for, that thing.
yeah,
So they will find you. You just have to, even if it's the most niche thing in the world, people will find you.
yeah. Okay. So, talk about pivoting a bit. So,
Hmm.
talk about like being a woman in the tech
Hmm.
space and then being a Muslim woman in the tech space. And we're transitioning to like your part a
Awesome.
bit. Yeah.
No worries. So I would say I'm grateful to be in the time now where there's a lot more representation for people who look like me.
Mhm.
I would say even though there's not like a whole lot, there's a whole lot more than there was.
Yeah.
And growing up, it's funny. Like I didn't because of like the support that I got for what I wanted to do.
Yeah.
I never saw the tech space or software engineering as an inherently male or whatever thing.
Yeah.
It
Yeah.
wasn't until I actually got to like school, middle school namely, and I remember like we were working on this group project and it was like a what was it? It was like a engineering car competition
Mhm.
in our class or whatever. And I will never forget this kid was like, I had made a suggestion, which actually ended up, fun fact, being the correct suggestion because he took over the whole project and we
Yeah.
ended up losing.
Yeah.
But he had said something when I made this suggestion, he said something along the lines of, "Oh, I don't even know why you're in this project, anyways. You don't even know what you're talking about. You don't even know what you're doing." And while that wasn't necessarily like directed towards like, you don't know what you're doing because you're a woman or whatever,
Mhm.
I still felt like, oh, it really hit me. And that was the
Yeah.
first time somebody really had like kind of like doubted my ability to do these things. Cause
Right.
growing up, it's like people knew me as like, oh, I'm a nerd, I'm a technical thing. Even I was that kid that the teachers, when they needed to set up the projector, she was like, oh, Hawa, come up here. I was that kid, so it's like for me, I was just like, okay, this is my brand. This is what people know me as. This
That
is the
hits you a
first
bit.
right. I was like, dang,
Yeah,
okay,
yeah,
that's cool, I
yeah,
guess.
yeah,
But it wasn't cool. I literally almost burst into tears because I was in middle school,
yeah.
and it wasn't great. And then I think from then my confidence kind of dwindled. I could, I always try to like not think about that. I mean, thankfully I can laugh about it now,
Yeah,
but for a while in typical middle school fashion, it got to me a little bit.
yeah, yeah,
And so, but I say all that to say that like I never really saw it as like a, whatever until, that moment. It's like little moments that add up. And then, for example, when I would take my CS classes, I would be the only woman in the room.
wow.
Like high school. It wasn't until like my senior year of high school, a couple friends actually took the class with me, and then
Yeah,
we were the only four women in the room.
yeah,
And then in high school,
yeah.
excuse me, college.
And then quick thing. So
Mhm.
only four women out of those four women, how many were black and Muslim?
Oh well, I was the only black and Muslim one.
Okay.
Frankly, I was probably the only black and Muslim woman at in my class at the time. I think. Nope. Let me take that back. There were maybe like two,
Okay.
but there
Okay.
wasn't a lot of us in where I grew up. So
Okay.
I was probably the only black and Muslim woman.
Yeah.
Now, two of my friends that joined were black women, and then the third friend, she was white woman,
Okay.
but only black and Muslim. So I don't know. It's weird. When people say like, "Oh, I don't see color," blah blah blah, but like, and you're like, "Okay, bro, whatever." But like, genuinely, it's like it didn't phase me.
That's
Right? It didn't phase me for a long time because I was like, "This is me. Like, this
yeah,
is who I am." So
yeah, yeah.
I don't care what anybody says. Like, if you say I can't do this because I'm this, you're stupid, right?
Mhm.
I was like, that don't even make sense. It wasn't until undergrad I was starting to get a little self conscious because I was like, there were just a lot of people who I felt like just had so much knowledge, but the nature of our program,
Mhm.
people tend to gatekeep a
Yep.
lot. They don't want to work with
Yep.
you. They don't want to they don't want to do things with you unless you're making this GPA or whatever. And then God forbid you ask a question in class.
Mm.
I was the queen of asking questions in class in high school and
Which
in
is
middle
important.
school.
Please do.
It's so
Yeah.
important,
Yep.
but there were some teachers who would make me feel bad for asking questions. They'd be like, "Hawa, you're limited to like 5 questions because you just keep asking questions."
Yeah.
Don't get me wrong. Maybe some of them questions, maybe some of them weren't that relevant. But at the end of the
Yeah.
day, like I feel like that could have been handled differently
Yeah.
because it shifted my
Yeah.
perspective. Like I was like, oh, maybe I don't need to be asking questions. Maybe I just need to figure it out.
Yeah. Well, I think even to that point right there, I think it's important for any teachers who are watching this because we actually got a few tech folks that teach
Hmm.
both in high school and college. It's important for especially students, young and old, that from a confidence standpoint, you want to feel as if I can ask something to my instructor and not feel as if like you're dumb for asking a question because that shoots a lot of confidence. And then when you don't ask these questions, you struggle with things that you shouldn't be taking 2, 3 weeks with when somebody can simply explain that with one or two sentences that can,
Exactly.
save some time. So, yeah,
I
I'm
mean,
glad you asked the questions.
yeah, you
So,
put it perfectly. But in high and college, that fear was like reignited, and because every time you would ask a question, people would just mutter, or they look at you like, "Why'd you ask that question?"
yeah, right.
And a lot of times there are genuine questions, and I would even notice it when other people would ask questions too. They would raise their hand, ask a question. People would make little comments, and then it's like, well, yikes, who's the question police? Like it's like, what's going on?
Hey, what's up, fam? This is just a quick reminder about the whiteboard sessions. For those who aren't familiar, the whiteboard sessions are really important because that's kind of where we break down how technologies work, the ins and outs of it. The whiteboard sessions really are to help explain things in a really simplistic manner. So if you have any questions about the whiteboard sessions, feel free to email us at africansintechnology@gmail.com. Again, it's africansintechnology@gmail.com. If there's anything that we're saying that doesn't make sense or anything that needs to be clarified a bit further, we take any and every questions. You can hit us up via email or via our Instagram channel or any of our social media handles through the comments as well. All right, fam, back to the video.
So, and like you said, asking questions is so important to actually grasping things and
Yep. Yep.
understanding, building that knowledge and context.
Yeah.
But again, I stunted that because I just felt like, why, like, if I do this, then it looks like I'm an idiot, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
According to everybody else, right?
Right.
And that, of course, you're in your head about that, but that's genuinely what I thought for a very long time. And then when I started opening my eyes, you grow up inevitably as a minority, you start to see like life for what it is.
Yeah.
And so when you start to notice a lot of times when you're the only person and it's everything starts clicking and then you read things online and then you're just like, oh yikes, maybe I am the only person like me who's doing this.
Gotcha.
And it really like settled in like college. I was like, oh, it's just, obviously it's not just me out here, but I don't see a lot of people who look like me doing this,
Yeah.
right? And I'm not gonna lie, I think it motivated me.
Yeah.
I didn't take it, of course people say things and you're more motivated to be the best maybe out of a place of insecurity because it's like I mentioned earlier, it's like I can't not be good because if I'm not good, the next time somebody who looks like me walks in the room, I can't have somebody else thinking
Right.
that they're not good. I need them to think that they're really good because of me,
Right.
right?
Yeah.
um and so, yeah, I would say like it was a motivation to just be like, you know what? I'm gonna represent my people. I'm gonna represent me, but also the ones who are like me that are coming after me.
Yeah.
So for me, it was more like, oh, I'm doing this for the girl who I don't even know exists yet, but I know there's one who's gonna be like me again and again and again. So I got to do this right. I gotta lock in. I gotta do my best.
Yeah.
So I think that's kind of the perspective I looked at it for a long time. It was more like I don't know, it was weird. I don't know if it's because I'm an older sister or I'm the oldest.
Mhm.
It's like a weird kind of like, not protection. It's weird. I don't know how to describe it
Yeah.
because it's like, I just want to do this really well.
Yeah.
So then that way, people after me
Yeah.
don't have to make excuses for me or make excuses for themselves or overcompensate because of something I did
Right.
or somewhere I fell short.
Yeah.
I don't know. I don't know if that's like egotistical, but
No, no, I
but
think
just like,
I mean it's your motivations what was driving you. So I think that's valid. Um GSU, is that a HBCU?
it's funny, that you asked that question.
Yeah.
I would say it's one of somebody put it. It was like PWI is like PWI is like predominantly a white institution.
Hmm.
I think Georgia State is like a P. Is it a PBU? I don't know if that's still true though. I don't know if it's like a. It's not an HBCU because it's not historically black only college,
Yeah.
but we have a large amount of minorities that attend the college,
Yeah.
whether that be international students or African American, you know
Yeah.
African, South Asian, you know all kinds of people.
Yeah. So based on that, the reason why I asked that, it's like from a college that's as diverse as that and still being like a major minority in the program that you're in, just imagine now you have an institution that doesn't have as much diversity. Um, and this is not 2003. This
Mm,
is not 1999. This is like in the late 2000s, or 2019,
mm,
20. And to me, I mean, it screams that there needs to be more representation, but also needs to be more exposure, I think, as well. And that's kind of the reasons for Africans in Tech where we're talking about your experiences. It matters because somebody else might be going through the same exact thing, somewhere else. Like, am I the only Muslim woman that's like
you
in a tech
know
space?
and that's
So
totally valid. Yeah, exactly. I think, and to your point, that's kind of why I started Muslims in Motion, because it's like being the only person in these rooms,
yeah,
you start to wonder, is somebody going through my
right,
experience? Even if logically, yes, somebody, then it's a numbers thing.
right,
Obviously, maybe somebody out there.
right,
It makes a difference when you're actually hearing from somebody who's going through it, somebody who you see the person, you can even talk to them, reach
hmm,
out to them.
yep,
It's different,
right,
and that's why I appreciate like the initiative that you're doing, because it's like these things are important.
yeah,
I know people say like, oh, representation, but it does matter.
right,
It does, and it counts for something, because even if it's one person who logs on or scrolling on TikTok or Instagram and sees what you're
Yep.
doing. I mean, that's already a difference.
Right.
Even if one person sees that person's at and DMs them and asks them about that, that's still an impact.
Yep.
These things are important. And like you said, it does speak to just exposure, right? Because a lot of times, I was talking to somebody about this. A lot of people don't even realize they can do things until they see somebody that looks like them doing it.
Yep. Yep.
A lot of things we grow up, we're pre conditioned to think you have a certain role, you have a certain lot in life, whatever.
Yeah.
Now it might take you maybe longer than the next guy to do it or the next girl to do it, but that doesn't mean it's not meant for you,
Right.
you know?
Yeah.
But a lot of times, if you're limited by that belief, right?
Yeah.
I mean, we limit ourselves in so many ways we don't even realize.
Right.
It can be subconscious, it can be conscious, but it's still there and it's still real.
Right.
You don't think you can do it, or you don't see someone that looks like you doing it. I mean, for all you know, let's say you see people like you, all they do is or they're all bakers, like all your life. You only saw Sierra Leoneans be bakers,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
Then when you see one Sierra Leonean who's an F1 driver,
Yeah.
then you're like, oh, wait a minute. I never thought about being an F1 driver, but now that I see it,
Right.
it's happening.
Yep.
And I kind of like that. And I kind of could see myself being an F1 driver.
Yeah.
It's like weird. The human brain is so interesting, but like these are the things that we need, long
Yeah.
story short, to make, I don't know, to just improve that. How do I say this? Like to kind of make sure that when the next generation comes, when somebody else comes along, you know, we keep it going, right? I
Yeah.
think these things are so important.
Yeah. Yeah. I think the ability to like expand one's horizons. I think it's extremely important because when we also talk about this on podcast.
Mm-hmm.
The four, maybe five, professional disciplines that Africans typically known for. You're you're engineer, you're a doctor, lawyer. But if you're not one of these things, it's like, what are you? But over time, we started seeing that no, engineers can make a lot more than a doctor.
Yep.
And then you have entrepreneurs that can make a lot more,
Mhm.
content developers that can do, XYZ numbers more. Um, but it's a matter of being good at what you're doing and then also seeing somebody else succeed at XYZ
Absolutely.
and somebody that looks like you that
Mhm.
has same background, things like that. And then it gives you more motivation. And I think uh, from the tech standpoint, we're starting to penetrate, and I wouldn't say start, like we're penetrating more into that space, across the continent now
Mhm.
where people are seeing that, hey, so and so Hawa is she's doing this great things.
Mhm.
Why don't you be like Hawa?
No, seriously.
Yeah. She's such a
Yikes.
special woman. Then it's
Giving
like,
me
yeah,
flashbacks.
see, so now it's like it's things like that where I think it's very important because
Mhm.
you know it it validates you in a sense of, okay, I'm doing the right thing and somebody else is getting um confirmation that they can do this as well, but then also helps push the next generation to say, okay, there's a young woman here, a Muslim woman that's doing this thing, and she encountered a lot of these hurdles, but she was able to overcome, and I know I can
Absolutely.
do it as well. So that's really dope.
Thank
Yeah.
you. Yeah.
Yeah, so let's talk a little bit more about your podcast.
Mhm.
So like, when did you start it and like why did you start it?
So I actually started Muslims in Motion in September of last year, so September 2024.
Okay.
And the reason why I started it, um, so I like podcasts like a lot.
Okay.
I Again, y'all gonna get on me for this one, but my dad put me on the podcast, and I just couldn't stop
Shout out
listening to them.
dad.
Right, absolutely. But I just love podcasts so much. Whether it's like a finance podcast or like a lifestyle podcast, or I don't know, just like or other Muslim woman podcasts too. Like I just love them.
Yeah.
I'm always moving around, always busy with something. So podcasts are nice because like I don't have to sit down and watch it. I can just like listen while I'm driving,
Yeah.
listen while I'm cooking,
Yeah.
listen while I'm
Yeah.
coding, etc. Right? And I don't know. I think one day I was just sitting with myself. Uh, let me tell the story for real. So I so Ramadan is like a holy month for us,
Mhm.
and I remember one Ramadan I was like making a lot of like, prayer
Yep.
and dua, which is like supplication, right? And I was just praying, and I was like, Allah, God, like I want to do something on this earth that, like, when I leave, it positively impacts my community.
Okay.
Um, so then that way, obviously, I feel like everybody has a purpose, right?
Yeah.
And I think I was working, I was, making, thank God, like money and whatever. But I, I don't know. I'm really big on community. I'm really big on people,
Yeah.
and I just wanted to do something that helped a lot of people, helped my community. But how, right? I couldn't find the thing
Yeah.
to do it. So I prayed about it, prayed about it, prayed about it. Fast forward, I think one day I was like, that like little slump you have after work, you get home from work, you kind of laying on the floor, you're just like, long day, you just need to like decompress, right?
Mhm.
I was listening to podcasts, and on this podcast, actually, they were talking about the value of, I think it was an episode of, what was it called? The podcast is called Financial Feminist, but the episode was about what is your, like, making your own podcast. So she had a guest on there, and she was talking about making your own podcast or whatever.
Okay.
And the line that really stuck out to me was like, I she had said something along the lines of, why don't people make more podcasts? I mean, it brings you so much benefit. You get to connect with cool people, you get
Yep.
to network with amazing people, you get to learn from people, you get to talk with them. It's mostly about the people, right?
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
it's like
Yeah.
you get to develop your own personal soft skills, your own speaking skills, things like that. There's really no cost, like an inherent cost to having a podcast,
Yep.
right?
Mhm.
And then in my head, I was like, you know what? Why not a podcast? I was like, it's great, it's simple. I like to talk to people. I like to connect with people. I like networking. I like hearing about people's stories. Um, I like bringing people together, and I feel like I can do all these things with a podcast.
Yeah.
So, on my computer, I started brainstorming names for the podcast. And I put my little suggestions in a group chat, and my friends were like, "This is lame. Try again." And I was like, "Okay, guys, not too much." And then I did it again and again. I was like, "You know what? Muslimas in motion," because I want to talk about Muslimas making motion in their respective fields.
Okay.
So whether that is tech, whether that is the medical field, whether that is community building or slash community leaders,
Yep.
whether that is in fields that are not traditionally, like we mentioned, our immigrant families love them, but doctor, lawyer, engineer. I want to talk about fields that are not necessarily those things too. Like I want to make these things known to the girls who maybe feel like, okay, this is my lot in life. This is all I have. And I'm gonna be quite transparent. A lot of the media out there for Muslim women, a lot of times it's just media about men, the newest trendy hijab, and a cup of matcha.
Gotcha.
And don't get me wrong, all of these things, marriage and, matcha and hijabs, they're all very fun things, right? But that's not all there is to life,
Yeah.
I feel like, as somebody who, when I grew up, the typical African parents are like, we want you to get married, blah, blah, blah.
Yeah.
My parents, they did not even worry about none of that. They were just like, oh, go to school, work hard, get get what you want out of life. And I'm very grateful for that, by
Yeah.
the way, because it's like that's not the reality for a lot of African women or first generation women.
Yeah.
But my parents were very much like, prioritize school, work hard, do these things, do what fulfills you, things like that.
Yeah.
And I feel like the messaging that we put out there for people of our community is super important. I mean, historically, in Islam, I mean, it was a Muslim woman who actually created the first university. I think we kind of need to come back to like, okay, what can we offer besides, these few things. Like I know Muslim women who are entrepreneurs. They got their own businesses. They from doing henna to selling the henna. We got Muslim women who are community leaders and event planners and you know own restaurants and like why are we not talking about that? I'm not seeing TikToks about that. I'm not seeing videos about that. I'm just seeing and like I said, it's cool when you just need to decompress and you see the vlog about daily vlog. I went to this cafe. That's fine. But I think what kind of content and messaging you're consuming is
Yeah.
so important because we have young girls, they're growing up, they're going on YouTube, TikTok. That can't be all there is. You
Yeah.
can't tell somebody in the face like, "Hey, go to school, work hard," but then all you see is people out there enjoying life. Um like no, like we gotta have examples, right? We gotta have role models, people to look to and people to look after. So like we mentioned, you don't believe something can be for you till you see it, right?
Yeah.
And I
Yeah.
think it's so important, especially nowadays, there's a lot of stuff going around by a lot of people. I think it's important to have positive examples and positive outlooks of our community, right? And I wanted to just provide a platform for people to do that. I wanted to provide that. Um, so since I didn't see that,
Yeah.
I was like, you know what? I'm a create it. I know so many amazing Muslim women in my
That's
life
awesome.
that are doing amazing things, and I feel like they deserve to be talked about. They deserve to be, excuse me, they deserve to be put on the map. I want them to express their stories, why they're doing it, like the passion, like hearing the passion, hearing the why, the how behind it. Because let's say there's a girl who wants to do her own business, who wants to find out more information about these things, whether it's registering for an LLC or, you know, finding out how to get licensing and stuff. You know, it's a it makes a whole lot of difference when you're seeing that and consuming that from somebody that looks like you, that sounds like you know what I
Definitely.
mean?
Definitely.
Yeah, it makes it feel more tangible almost. And then not only that, I want to provide a community where people, to have mentorship, to have access to these opportunities to even talk to these people, right? To even provide that insight. Because, like I said, it's important, right? We got to have these kind of initiatives to build our community up. We are capable of so much. And like I said, the mind can be so limiting, right? If we let it. So I think it's important to put stuff out there that allows us to shift our perspective and just allows us to improve individually and together as well.
Yeah. No, that's really good. When it comes to like the focus, like so you work with women of all diverse backgrounds, Muslim women of all
Mhm.
diverse backgrounds. Like what is it that you specifically do? Like what's the focus for the podcast? Is it more of like an encouragement for them? Or is it more of like telling their stories, allowing them to share their stories, or is it a combination?
Yes. So typically, depending on the guest,
Mm.
but so far, what I've done is I essentially allow people to tell, explain who they are beyond like their job title.
Yeah.
What are they doing? The why behind why they're doing it. And if they're interested, like let's say they're an entrepreneur, they're a writer, a copywriter, whatever, the how. Like give us the scoop.
Yeah.
Like how are you doing this? How are you succeeding at this? So then when the next girl comes along, they want to do it. It's almost like kind of giving them a roadmap
Gotcha.
because I
That's
want it to be a resource for people
yep.
ultimately, you know, and that can come in many forms. Whether you are sharing your stories about corporate and like corporate America and the
Yep.
corporate space,
Yep.
whether you are sharing your entrepreneurship horror stories, even the stories themselves can be a resource. So
Yeah.
then one can learn from them and not make the same mistakes as the last person.
Yep.
But then also when it does come time, like tangible advice too, because I feel like a lot of times people give a lot of platitudes and all this cool, like, oh, just work hard,
Yeah.
don't give up. But like, what does that look like?
Right. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Like tell people where to go, what website to go to get the LLC. Tell people what department to go to get the to get the licensing, to get the what bank to go to get the best you know business bank account,
Right.
like tell them the little grants you can get,
Right.
give people resources,
Yeah.
you know? We
Right.
need more of that. Like
Yeah.
the resource sharing. No more gatekeeping.
Yeah.
Like
Yeah.
we gotta make this something that's beneficial.
Right.
You know, obviously there's benefit to talking and sharing, but I also want it to be tangible as well.
Right. No, that's a good point. Um, so in terms of like the the way saw a couple of clips that you put on there, and even now people wonder, okay, how do you podcast without showing your face? Like, what's the importance of that? Can you talk about that?
So, well, I decided to actually go faceless for a couple of things.
Okay.
Um, I think the main thing for me was, hmm, well, this might get a little controversial, but
Mhm.
I'm gonna say it. I feel like when you're a woman online, the first thing people are gonna look at is what you look like,
Yeah.
your face. You know, they're gonna consume that first,
Yeah.
and men too, right?
Hmm.
You're gonna look like, oh, and the truth is, we're human. We have biases.
Yep.
See a good looking person on the screen, you're gonna
Like,
swipe in, you're gonna
yeah.
click in,
Yep.
right?
Yep.
Um, you don't, you might just swipe away. And and you know what? Obviously, beauty is subjective. You know, like people like what they like. But you see my
Yeah.
point, right?
Yeah.
I want
Please click my video. Don't make me look bad.
I want people to consume the content
Yeah.
because of what the content is.
Yeah.
I don't want
I
people to
get it.
consume the content because my guest or this person or, you know,
Yeah.
whatever. Like, I
Gotcha.
don't want it to be a thing of, oh, did I do my makeup?
Gotcha.
Is my hijab, you know, the right color? Is my outfit the right thing?
Gotcha.
Because then it doesn't become the content
Yeah.
anymore. It becomes all these other things that are kind of taking away from it, to be honest. That's what I looked at it as.
Gotcha.
And, you know, as women, you know, naturally we want to look nice. So but I didn't want my guests to think about that. I didn't want them to think about, oh, what outfit am I gonna wear? Now you stressing about the outfit and the makeup,
Yeah.
but like you haven't even thought about what questions you want to answer. You know what I mean?
Gotcha.
And not taking away from, you know, anybody who does the visual. I enjoy visual podcasts. I consume them as well. But for me, there was like a certain intention behind it that I was like, you know what, I really want to take this direction. Um, and I don't regret it. If anything, I find it a bit of like of a creative challenge, obviously, because you got to do things a little differently.
Right.
But I don't regret it simply because of the intention I had behind it. I didn't want it to be, like I said, another, you know, social media inherently, it's like at the end of the day, it's a visual thing. You know, people consume things because they like how it looks, they like how it makes them feel. But I guess at the risk of sounding like holier than thou, I just didn't want it to be another, I didn't want to have this like superficial aspect. I just wanted it to, I wanted to take that completely out of the equation.
Gotcha.
So then that way, whoever comes on the podcast or, you know, whatever it is, you just have to, that's like one less thing you got to think about. You just got to think about sharing your resources, your story, whatever.
Yeah.
I'm going to be honest, it's kind of easier.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's like,
Yeah.
you know, don't get me wrong, you have an amazing setup here.
Mhm.
But I don't got it like that yet. So maybe
Yeah.
one day
Yeah.
I can set it up in a way where it's like, you know, or you know, we can be a little creative. So I won't say, you know, never say never. But I do appreciate there's visual aspects. So I try to be a little creative with it, you know, maybe not showing my whole face, but like, you know, showing me working or showing things that like still kind of grab people and engage people.
Yeah.
But at the end of the day, there's an audience for podcasts, there's an audience for audio people. And as one who partakes in these things, a lot of times I don't even watch the visual ones. So for me, it was like from a consumer standpoint and then also like the kind of the intention I had behind it as well.
Gotcha. So you do more like the Spotify and
Yeah, so Spotify, Apple
Apple Podcasts.
Podcasts,
Yeah.
iHeartRadio, YouTube,
Gotcha.
like the YouTube podcast part, yeah.
Okay. No, that's dope. No, that makes sense because I mean, for those who are watching it, like, oh, I can't see your face. Like, no, that's intentional.
Yeah.
Like, that's what it is. So okay, cool. So has that always been like the type of podcast that you've been doing, or is it just like a, you know, just a recent thing with Muslims in Motion?
So this is actually my first podcast.
Okay.
So,
Okay. All right.
but
Okay.
yeah, I think.
Well, in terms of content in general,
Oh, content.
yeah. Have you?
Yeah, I just was never really inclined to sharing my face, I guess,
Okay.
because again, I mean, don't get me wrong. I know some people are like, is it an insecurity thing or whatever? Honestly, I don't care what people see me every day,
Yeah.
so it's really not about
Yeah.
seeing
Yeah.
my face.
Yeah.
It's there's like I don't know. It's just not something I've thought about, and then also I don't know. It's just not. I don't know. For this, I really wanted that intention to be there,
Yeah.
but in before times, I didn't really create like mass consumed content. It was really just like my friends, all my close friends, and whatever. And all I do is take pictures of food. I really like food, and I like pretty sunsets and nature. So, but that usually didn't have my face in it.
Gotcha.
Yeah, I think also too it might be so in Islam we have like a concept of like modesty or haya. It's like shame, like the literal translation, but it's like long story short, it's like you don't want to do too much,
Yeah.
right? At the end of the day, like you got to do when you take all these external factors out of it, it keeps the intention pure, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
Like it keeps you on the straight, like because we're human, we have
Yeah.
egos.
Yep.
Inevitably, maybe one day, like you're more focused on your hair or whatever for this episode, and that's because you're human. You want to
Yeah.
look nice, you want to make sure this thing is nice,
Right.
but then you don't want to throw a whole shot or recording away because you turned out maybe your
Yeah. You
lineup
looked a
wasn't
certain way.
as
Yeah. Yeah.
straight
Yep.
as
Yep. Yep.
they looked in the mirror,
Yep.
and now you're just like, let's throw this whole episode out. You know,
Hmm.
we don't have to think about that when it's just audio.
Yeah.
But
Yeah, that makes
again,
sense.
there's also benefits to video as well. I mean, like I said, I mean, this is a video, like the way social media is now, TikTok, Instagram, Reels, all these things,
Yeah.
video, right? And
Right.
video is just gonna pull people in better. So there's pros and cons to
Yeah.
both, but that was just my reasoning behind it, you know.
Okay. No, that makes sense. And in terms of like, and we're gonna wrap up in a little bit.
Hmm.
In terms of in the workforce,
Hmm.
have you ever had to decline or do certain things based on like workforce practices that goes against like your culture or your faith? I should say not culture, but faith.
Yeah, I
Um,
would say like easiest example I can think of is like so I remember for like this new hire event thing, they it's kind of funny. They kind of brought they had like a bunch of like bar carts. Like they had like a transportable bar. They
oh
brought
yeah,
they brought like
that's a tech
kegs
thing. Yeah,
in the break room. Everybody was having a good old time, and everybody was like, "Oh,
I'm sorry,
Hawa,
guys.
oh you're." It was like, "Oh, come to the break room, you know,
Yeah.
whatever." And I was just like, "No, I'm good. Let me finish my pull request." And they was like, "Oh, you sure? Like we're having a good time." I was
Gotta
like,
keep my
"No, I'm
PRA.
good." Guys, I'm really yeah,
Yeah.
no. And people know like, you know, anybody who's willing to ask,
Mhm.
right? I'm always, you know, ready to answer any questions that anybody has about my faith. Like,
Yeah.
you know, I've had people ask me multiple questions, especially when it's Ramadan. They ask me, "Oh, why can't you eat this? Why can't you drink this?" And I'm never opposed to answering it. It's just like a matter of like you have your values and you kind of stick by them, right? Or like certain company functions, it's just kind of like I don't know. I'm gonna be honest. Being around drunk people is not the most fun thing if you're
Yeah.
not one of them,
Right.
right? So it's like
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
you just don't want to be in situations where you kind of don't need to be in,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
So for me, it's just a matter of like having my values and sticking by them.
Yeah.
And that's not to say that like, of course, if somebody always offers an alternative, which if you're lucky, you have a cool team,
Right.
you know, people do things and you know, obviously they don't have got to move mountains,
Right.
but at the same time, you come to a place of understanding and compromise.
Yeah.
So like everybody can have a good time.
Right.
Um but at the same time I'm thankful to be in a place now or to be in a place in my faith where you know I can say this is what it is. I'm not willing to budge on that, you
Yeah.
know what I mean?
Yeah.
And it's not easy, right? Because obviously one of the things of being in, especially in a corporate space, is that you're just trying to fit in.
Right.
You got to be a part of the group, visibility and all and whatever
Yeah.
whatnot. But I'm grateful to say that I was able to gain that visibility, gain that respect, and gain that camaraderie with my peers without necessarily having to, well, without having to compromise on,
Yeah.
on my beliefs. And, I'm grateful for that because, like I said, I'm not here sitting like it's the easiest thing, like, oh, guys, if you don't, you're a clown.
Right.
Everything's nuanced. There's a story behind everybody's thing, right?
Right.
But, I think it's really important once you do kind of set that precedent and set that boundary.
Yeah.
I mean, it gets easier from there because now people are like, okay, this is
Right.
who she is. This is who he is. He's not doing that. That's fine.
Yeah.
Let's find 9 times out of 10, people are going to find, they're going to try to find a way to make everybody happy,
Yeah.
But I think you're never going to regret standing on your ground. What you're
Right.
going to regret is like not standing on your ground and
Yeah.
then you get played in your face anyways.
Right.
And then you're like, well, I wish I didn't compromise now
Yeah.
because, I'm still here and it kind of sucks.
Yeah.
So, I
Yeah.
think it's important.
No, I mean that's really good points. I think the fact that you said your team one is thinking about inclusiveness, like, okay, Hawa doesn't do this because of XYZ reasons. Let's figure out alternatives.
Hmm.
That's very important. I've been in many companies that do that, and I love that when companies think
Hmm.
about each individual as part of the team, but then also from the aspect that you weren't offended that that's the culture, and
Hmm.
it's you just choose to abstain from it, and you knew more about yourself and what you represent, and kind of not compromising on that. So
Yeah, because we have to be honest, right? I mean, the truth is, like I know the culture that I grew up in. I know where the places I work. But that's why it's so important to advocate for yourself,
yep,
right?
yep,
That's the first thing. Like you got to stick up for yourself. You gotta lay your ground. Secondly, the point I want to make is like this is also why I'm building the platform I'm building because what about the next young Muslim girl who doesn't know how to navigate this?
right,
Now she got somebody, a podcast or episode to listen to, or somebody else to ask, like,
yeah,
hey, how do you navigate this?
right,
Because like I said, every situation is it's not the same,
yeah,
right? You got some teammates and some people who are pushier than
right,
others. You got some people who are more chill than others. So, you know, finding that balance, finding what's how to navigate this is super important. But at the end of the day, right? If it doesn't serve you, you bounce, right? Because nothing is worth, what doesn't work for you doesn't work for you, right?
yeah, yeah,
It's important to be somewhere that you can be yourself to your best work self anyways, and then also get your work done. So
definitely, definitely. Okay, cool. All right. So last question I'm going to ask you before we head to the whiteboard. Um, when it comes to seeing yourself in, let's say, 5 years from now, where do you see yourself?
let's see. Well, I am building some projects. I So hopefully in 5 years time I'll be a lot further along on those projects, like application wise,
Okay,
software wise.
gotcha. Okay,
I would like to see myself in a place where I'm gonna be quite frank. The podcast and the initiative I'm working on brings me a lot of joy, a lot of fulfillment.
nice, nice.
So ideally I'd like to be in a place in life where I can work on this
Hmm.
to the fullest extent and then also still build software and do the things that I love as well technically. Whether that's building software for what I'm doing or building software for others who are doing things similar to what I'm doing.
Yeah,
I want to be in a place where I've at least built something of my own that I can say people use and value and love. I'm in a place where I'm, you know, where I've built the podcast to a point where, maybe thousands and millions of people are benefiting
yeah,
from it, right?
yeah,
And the community aspect as well, too, because community building also comes with its own thing. I want to be in a place where I know I said earlier, like, you can't always do what you love all the time, but these are all things I love. I love building things that benefit people. I love whether that be communities, podcasts, or software.
yeah.
So I want to be in a place where I'm fulfilling my mission and doing all three of those.
Gotcha.
So what that looks like, only the future tells. But
Yeah,
that's where I'd like to be.
nice, nice.
I don't know if that was a good answer.
No, 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 that's great. I always ask this as well, like, have you thought about like business in, you know, the continent? So Ivory Coast, have you thought about or Cote d'Ivoire, when it comes to like doing business there? Have you ever thought about like whether it's from a software standpoint or whether it's from like a social entrepreneurship standpoint? Have you thought about that at all? If not, it's fine.
Well, I have
Okay.
actually. I talked with a couple of friends about it actually.
Okay.
Well, it wasn't like really on the software standpoint, but it was more like on the it was more of like the business standpoint,
Okay.
but
You don't have to reveal it. If it's
yeah,
yeah, yeah,
it's
no, yeah,
okay.
yeah. You don't have to reveal it.
But
Yeah, yeah,
yeah,
yeah.
I love that country so much. So I
Nice. Yeah.
think I definitely see myself contributing in some form of fashion. So actually, my grandpa, may he rest in peace, he actually started a school back there. So like we
Nice.
actually have like the largest Islamic school in Abidjan.
Nice. Nice.
So my family,
Your family. Okay.
yes.
Okay.
So I think it's
That's dope.
in our blood.
Yeah.
That's something
Yeah.
I definitely am in the works of contributing something to that initiative.
Okay.
Um, of course, that's all loading or whatever,
Yeah.
but I'm definitely, at the end of the day, right? I know where I come from, geographically. Yes,
Hmm.
that's the word.
Yeah.
Geographically, but it's also whether that's Atlanta, whether that's people here, whether that's people back home.
Yeah.
Like, I want to be in a place in my life where I can help everyone that needs that, right?
Yeah.
So I've definitely talked to some people about doing some things back home. So
Okay.
I'm hoping that these things can come to fruition within the next 5 years.
Okay.
But it's all a work in progress right now.
Nice. Nice. Yeah. No, we're 100% rooting for you for that.
Thank
We
you.
love to hear about like entrepreneurs, especially young entrepreneurs who are trying to do something in the continent. So that's really dope. So in 5 years, I'm expecting to, hear you like the next, mogul. Go towards.
Thank you. Thank
All
you.
right, fam. This is it for the Africans in Tech podcast. We want to thank Hawa Sila for an amazing time. She explained what she does as far as a Java developer, and as well as like the amazing work that she's doing with Muslimas in Motion. Hawa, if people wanted to get in contact with you, what's like a good method to contact you, whether email or your social media handles?
I'd like to thank you so much for this opportunity. It's really been an honor to kind of talk about, my story and everything. I truly appreciate it. If people would like to find me, I have my Instagram at Muslimas in Motion Pod. And then, of course, I'm on all podcast networks. You can listen to me there or share with somebody might benefit from it. I also have LinkedIn, and that's just my name, Hawasila. I'm I know like there's a lot of Hawasilas actually, so Hawasila Atlanta, try that. Um, and if you ever need help with like resume review, LinkedIn, whatever, or even just like questions, my inbox is always open. And yeah, those are my two main ways. So yeah, feel free to reach out and just say hello.
Awesome, awesome. Well, thank you, Hawa. And as always, we'll have Hawa's information at the bottom of this video, and any other platforms you find this on, you'll find our information as well. If you have any additional questions, feel free to ping us at africansintechnology@gmail.com. Again, it's africansintechnology@gmail.com. My name is Sar Levy, and it's Africans in Tech.
Hey, what up, fam? This is Sar Levy, host of Africans in Tech, where we're building bridges and shaping futures in tech. Just a quick reminder for those who've not yet subscribed to our YouTube channel, hit that subscribe button. You can catch all of our content, including our whiteboard sessions, where you'll find our full-length videos on our channel. And hit that notification bell, fam. All right?